Hey, Vern. I cannot hear you, Vern, if you're talking.
Is that better?
There we go. Perfect.
I don't know if I was smart enough to figure out how to do this part.
I had all the confidence in you.
How you been?
It's been a very long 2 weeks.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Started this career back in 1975. Good Lord, man, are you still alive? Many partners and friends have met their demise. Oh, what fun we had telling our lives. It started out with muscle and brawn. Unfortunately, now both are gone. There was the challenge to make it a go. Hell, Superman didn't have that much.
let's see. Let's try it this way. Are you able to hear the song?
What's that, Cap?
Are you able to hear the song?
Yeah, I heard it when it was
Okay,
playing.
cool. Do, do, do. Okay. I see three people in here. Now four. We'll give it a couple minutes for everyone to join. I can't remember. Can I claim this? I don't have that. Great. There's Tacio. Okay. While we wait for everyone, we'll probably get kicked off 2 minutes after, 3 minutes after. If y'all want to fill out our lovely little icebreaker, what have you guys seen as the best Black Friday deal of the year? If you guys want to enter your stuff in, and then we'll get started later in just a couple minutes. got it working. There we go.
This career back in 1975. Good Lord, man, are you still alive? Many partners and friends have met their demise. One we it started out with muscle and bone. There was a chance to make it go. And Superman didn't have that much to go. He did many things to prove up their feelings. Instead of what really mattered. Now I'm just saying more than her body's tattered. Baby, it's time to break my thing. At some point, everyone has to wait. Maybe there's another way that I can drag out the inevitable until another day. Learned anything somewhat aghast was I living a life for the people that mattered or looking for recognition, however scattered on now beyond the year 2024. Is there anything else? Can I give more? No more taking rounds or breaking rocks. Can I add value to this new young stock? Maybe there is one more thing. Could I maybe take them under my wing and let them know about all the mistakes that I made? Feeling great, making people better than I thought I was. Could it be that it's an honorable cause? How long can I do it? Can I reach everyone? Maybe not, but I'm good when it's no longer fun.
Rocks are the perfect way.
And inspire, take this industry into thing they desire.
Yeah, good to see you. Hi. Hi, guys. Good to see you. Yeah. Boom. You guys take care.
Okay. Hopefully that audio came through quite well. And I apologize if you heard a husky crying in the background. The song you heard was written by one of our panelists, Vern Goglio. And one of my previous coworkers made that into the power of AI, turned it into a song. So that's one way we're going to get started with this coffee break. If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Kat2. I am the programming chair for WIM USA. I am running the chaos that is our coffee breaks, so please bear with us. We have three wonderful speakers today, Dan Van Overbeke, Tacio Ferreira, and Vern Goglio. Please feel free to enter your names, WIM chapters, if you're joining us for the first time in the chat, and of course, what is the best Black Friday deal of the year? So with that, we're going to do a couple quick little WIM updates before we get into the coffee break. Abstracts are open for the 2026 conference. It's going to be in Tucson, Arizona this year from April 21st to the 23rd. Please feel free to check out our sponsorship opportunities. We've got the tracks on the left-hand side. Feel free to ask questions. You can either drop them in the chat here or reach out to wimusa.com. Check out the WIM website. It should be a great time. And if you are joining us for the first time for our coffee breaks, these are going to be every third Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We change up the topics at all points in time, but we like to have those conversations that sometimes our industry forgets to talk about. They may be technical, they may be WIM updates. We may just be talking about when life hits really hard. And so with that, Welcome to our November coffee break. We are flipping the script, talking about when life hits hard, managing work and life. As I said, we've got our three wonderful panelist speakers with us today. So I'm going to ask them all to come off of mute. During the coffee break, if you guys have any questions for our speakers or want to ask any of them a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. This is meant to be a kind of relaxed, just open discussion about what it's like working in one of the hardest industries that we work in. So Dan, I'm going to pick on you and have you go first. Give yourself a little introduction. And besides the fact that I asked, tell us why this topic matters to you.
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Kat, for inviting me to do this. Yes. And also thanks for your leadership in the industry as well. But a little bit about myself. Grew up in North Dakota, went to school, Kat, graduated in 2016, mining engineering. Right out of college, went to work with Gillette Peabody and several other things. But currently in my new role, I am business development operator for ABB, covering the U.S., specifically looking at high power motion products like motors and drives. And I'm lucky enough to be based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I have three lovely children, an awesome wife, and I can't forget about my yellow lab, 6 years old, but he still acts like a puppy. So he's a handful there. We like to call him our test child, right? So that's how we got things rolling. And yeah, thank you for bringing us on here. Part of the discussion on, why I chose to do this is, in this industry, very demanding on as far as travel, et cetera, depending on your role, right? And cyclical nature, right? So kind of touch on two different things that kind of struck a chord is the family balance, right? Balancing that, and then also balancing the ups and downs of the industry, which have hit me personally on different levels, and wanted to be part of that participation. So thank you again, Kat.
Thank you, Dan. Tacio, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Kat, for the invite. Really excited to be here. Have engaged with the women in mining before in my career, and glad to be participating. About myself, Tacio Ferreira, from born and raised in Brazil. I've been in the mining industry now for what 12, 13 years, from school in Brazil to masters in the United States, and then starting my career in the Nevada mines in the gold mining industry with Newmont, and then progressing to where I am now in Phoenix with Dyno Nobel. Very rewarding career, very happy to be in the mining industry, but also excited to talk about the things that quote unquote it takes away from you, right? It's an industry that takes quite of effort to stay in and to succeed in, and that definitely affects life, right? It affects the choices you make as a family, as an individual, and I think it's a topic that we don't talk very often. So I think it's a good place for us to talk about this here, right? And happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. And Vern, last but not least, I know we played your poem, but if you want to talk a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Vern Goglio. I was born and raised in Green River, Wyoming. It's where I started my mining career underground at one of the Trona mines there in the area. May of 1975, so Tacio, I've been there for a little bit. Went to school in Butte at Montana Tech, played football there, drank beer, and did wind up getting a BS in mining engineering. So I guess that was a plus out of it. And I have to say, when I say BS, I've always lived by the premise that if I can't blind people with brilliance, I'll try and baffle them with bullshit. So that leads me to where I'm at now. I'm working with cementation. Excuse me, just doing leadership development now with cementation and doing high level audits of our projects, but auditing our culture, not our work, more how we're doing our work. So that's me. And yes, Kat, I'm here because you asked me to. But other than that, being in the industry as long as I have, I've seen a lot of changes. And I have to say a lot for the good. But one of the reasons last year, about a year and a half ago, my wife came up to me and said, "You're going to have to start looking for your fourth if you don't smarten up pretty soon." And that hit pretty hard. So just wanted to share stories. Excuse me.
Perfect. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We should have all the presenters pinned. So we'll get into the nitty gritty. I think I've stopped sharing my screen. Yeah. So you all are obviously you have a connection to me, and that's half the battle of finding speakers. But we've talked a lot about you guys have different journeys and different stories. And for those of you who have never heard me talk, I'm a big proponent of talking about the stories, whether or not they're eloquent and well thought out and formed, or I may say and like and then in many instances and forget to call a part the right number. I've been called up that by my mechanic many times today. But there's a lot of power in the words that we share and the stories that we come from, and there's power in the stories that we don't tell. And as Vern has talked about, he had a culture shift, and Tacio, you've had a literal culture shift, and Dan, you've gone through a bunch of stuff as well. So while we kick off into this coffee break, I just want everyone to be kind of respectful of the stories. All the uh everything happens for a reason, and we all talk about different things. So as men in the industry at a women in mining event, what would you guys say is the pivotal kind of aha moment that you really had to kind of sit down and be like, do I want to do this? Do I need to change my career path? Do I still want to stay in this industry? Because I feel like we talk about a lot of other stuff, but we never talk about that moment. So any of you guys can jump in, but talk about it and what steps you're obviously still here and we appreciate everything you do. And I saw Dan raise his hand, so go for it, Dan.
Sounds good. So, yeah, obviously I got in the mining industry, back in the early days, and the reason I brought it to is if it isn't mined, it's grown, right? And I grew up in agriculture background, and I always wondered where the fertilizer came from, and that just kind of piqued my interest, right? And everything's built from mining, so I just had a fascination and love from it from that side, and graduated, and right out of graduation, I had an aha moment of what this industry can be like with the cyclical nature, right? The ups and downs. I was blessed enough to have a job opportunity at the time, which was few and far to come by in the industry just based on the economics. And, had to see several of my colleagues get let go. And they all, some of them had families, some of them have been there for many years. And, it's a lot of business decisions that are made, and right or wrong. I mean, you always can be Monday morning quarterback, but they that sparked my interest pretty much immediately out of coming out of school, and then kind of the next caveat into my second job there, and working on the frac sand side of things. And again, you go into this industry, how can I diversify my risk a little bit, right? And you go to say a different commodity, and say, for example, frac sand, and you're thinking, okay, this thing's going to be around for a long time, we're going to need this for a while. And then the market tanks, the oil market tanks, and you're in the same position that you were in several years ago, and it really makes you wonder. It questions your foundation, as is this the right path, especially when you're starting your career and looking to build a family, and et cetera. So yeah, that's what my first moment was.
I was gonna, piggyback on Dan's comments, right, about industry changes, and we know that the industry is cyclical, and we can probably state that it's going to continue to be cyclical, right? And we've been on a long stretch of a good side of mining, fortunately, but not, I'd add to it this that sometimes it's not only the volatility of price or commodity prices that might shift the world, right, a little bit. In my case, what I've seen happen that made me question a lot of decisions, right, and how I would go about surviving in this industry, or even potentially shifting gears a little bit, was uh, companies, business deals happen, right? Like you may be working for a company today that may be absorbed or may be combined with another company in the future, right? Especially in the current moment of the industry where you see mergers and acquisitions quite active, right? So you might get caught up in the middle of a game where the rules that you believe you were playing on or under, that might change, right? Depending on how certain things happen in the industry. That could be mergers, could be acquisitions, could be a combination of assets and whatnot. And I've seen that happen before, and that ultimately drove a lot of my life decisions from there. Especially from I want to say an immigration standpoint, right? Coming from Brazil, my goal to be in the mining industry was to continually use it for my ultimate goal, which is to become and stay in the United States with my family and to grow my family in this country. And at a certain point in my career, uh, the company that I worked for combined with a different one, and now the rules change, right? There's a new governing system in place, and questions arise about how much support you're going to get to continue through that immigration pathway, for example. And that was something that I had to deal with, and it definitely affected how I navigated through life, right? It made me change decisions, and I ultimately ended up moving to a different place, starting with the new company, because I realized that when major combinations of assets in two companies start to function together, they have a lot to do to get that business model operating successfully. And somebody, lifting up a hand and asking about how is this going to influence support for people that need immigration support, that's not the priority at that moment, right? There's a lot of business decisions being uh, considered, and a lot of rotating parts, a lot of moving parts, that it just wasn't a priority, and I decided to move on, with a different decision. So that was definitely one that shook up, my life per se. So just wanted to share that.
So I guess, Kat, mine's a little more personal. Um, I was, you may not be able to tell, but I was a bit of an orangutan when it's starting in the industry, because that's what it took to work in the mining industry back in the 70s and 80s. But I can remember exactly the moment when understood that the way I was, the way the mining culture had to change. And it happened on April 1st, 1999 at the Meikle mine. Just a quick story. I was out to dinner with my wife in the afternoon, got home, was out to dinner with her, got a phone call and said, "You need to come back to the mine. We've had a fatality with one of our contractors." Um, I'm ashamed to say this now, but the thought that ran through my head was, damn, now I have to leave dinner with my wife and go back out to the mine site. But and it embarrasses me to think that I was like that at that time. But went back out to the mine site, and one of Dynatech's miners, Ken Stevenson, was putting in lining an ore pass for us. He fell down the raise 150 feet and perished in that accident. I was at the bottom of the raise, waiting for the coroner to declare it was an accident, not a homicide. They have to do that before we can change the scene. Got to that point, put Ken into a body bag, drug him out of the raise, and was getting ready to put him on a tractor to take him to the surface. And I heard somebody crying behind me. And I'd been around several fatalities prior to this and never heard that kind of a reaction at the scene. Somebody crying. And I turned around to see who it was. And it was Bob Stevenson, his father. He just watched me load his son into a body bag and put him on a tractor for the last ride out. That's exactly the moment that I figured out I either have to change, the industry has to change, or I have to go do something different.
Yeah, when we get into mine rescue and fatalities, I don't know if anyone else on the call has dealt with that or has had family members deal with it. I remember my dad was a rescuer on the Sunshine Mine. Ignore the husky. He was one of the rescuers on the Sunshine Mine disaster, and it took him 28 years to tell me anything about it. And you know, I don't he went into safety, but mentally it's like, how do you deal with that? How do you talk about pulling people that you've worked with every day? Because we always say we work with our coworkers more than we're at home with our families. Um, and I know some of our other topics last month we talked about is how do you have these discussions with your boss? And did you ever have, or with each other, or how did you talk about this? Have you talked, Fern, I know you've talked about this stuff, but when you see those reactions, how do you start that conversation with those you work with in order to, say, hey, I'm struggling, whether it's a fatality or the panic of, losing your job, feeling like a failure as a father. I know I've had some of my best friends have broken down in front of me because they feel like they're failing because this industry is so stressful, and they're not. But how do you guys break that stigma?
I think, Kat, from my standpoint, is you know, working in the mining industry, you've got an ego. I don't care if you're male, female, alien. You have an ego here, and I think what we have to work hard at doing is getting out of our own way. And by that I mean with egos come fears, right? Your fear of maybe not being seen as competent or maybe not being seen as having the confidence to succeed. I think if you don't look at address those fears and seek out somebody to ask for help when you need it, that's what it takes in my mind. Denial is a tough thing. You can, I mean, I went through a long period in my life of just denying that it happened and going on with the next shift.
Yeah, piggyback and just add, Vern, this is very humbling to hear about because the ego part is a big one, right? And I think when we extract the ego, right, or when we take away that ego portion, that fear of being seen a certain way, that also allows us to start looking towards someone instead of looking at ourselves. And that allows us to think of the other person first and start asking more, how they're doing, what's going on, trying to learn more about the other people. And I think that is what ultimately creates an environment, right, that allows first asking the other person so that the other person now becomes safe or feels safe enough to come to you if they have something that they're working with or working through, right? So I think the ego portion is definitely a crucial element there to create that environment, right, for people to feel safe enough to speak up and bring up points to talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely a culture thing, right? Is you can be a leader in that aspect and open up and create an environment for people to open up and yeah, it's it's one of those things that it doesn't come natural for a lot of people, right? And if that's the culture of the industry and to keep everything siloed and put it down and don't talk about those hard things, it resonates throughout the rest of the culture and company. So yeah, it takes leadership at the company level and individual level to understand that and build that rapport. And no, the ego is a fascinating topic for sure.
Definitely. It always gets in the way somehow. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. But with that, you all are married, you all have families. Vern, especially you've this is not you've been a contract miner, you've been in the industry, you've moved a lot around a heck of a lot. Dan, I know you've gone through the sudden changes. Same thing with you guys, with you, Tacio. How, I guess this is a two-part question. How did you talk about, the job changes with your spouse? I know at least Claudia's working. Dan, I think your wife's works too, but whether or not your wife works or not, your spouse works or not, how did you guys kind of sit down, or did you? And did you have a lesson learned of what do you wish that the conversation would have been? Just talking about, uprooting your family or being gone from your family for a long time, because that's sometimes what happens with contract miners.
Well, I'll start here. It all comes down, the cliche word communication, right? But it's so true on so many different levels and not just relationships and understanding that. But um, yeah, you got to communicate, understand what our boundaries are, what is our objective, have a goal, and figure out those priority lists on what is worth sacrificing, what isn't worth sacrificing, what is our end goal here. And you can have those discussions once and you can continue to reevaluate them, right? I think that's one of the things. It's like, okay, you get set in stone and start moving away. But it's one of those things that you got to continue to come back and have those conversations, reevaluate where you're at and are things working, are things not, et cetera, et cetera. And again, a lot of that stuff comes down to, doesn't matter if you're managing people, interacting with people, or in a relationship. It's applicable to all those things.
I was gonna another piggyback good topic to talk about here. I think life is, especially when you have a partner in life, right? A family, life is made out of seasons, right? Like there's a season in life, it sounds like, and in different seasons, different things are priorities, right? And that communication that Dan is talking about is really being on the same page with your partner in life there on what is our priority this season, right? I think I'll take this one maybe a bit more personally here and talk about this example, right? Kat, my wife very well, right? Claudia. When it was just the two of us, we were living and working in Nevada for the same company. Life seemed to be set in stone, right? Like this is status quo. I remember us having conversations about, wow, it feels like we're probably going to be here for the next 10 years, right? And then things change, right? Things change. And then we decided to prioritize again what our main goal was to ensure the success, ensure the a steady future for a future family that we were planning to have. So we wanted to make sure that we could stay in the country, both of us being from Brazil. And the opportunity came up for me to move jobs all the way across the country from Nevada to Illinois, because that would provide us a faster path towards, our citizenship in the United States. And because of visa, things, you could, in that season of life, we could only move, both of us, independently. We'd have to move with a job associated with that move that would do our immigration paperwork. And because that would unlock a faster path towards citizenship for us, we together agreed that we would be separated for however long it was necessary. We estimated for about 6 months or so for her to find a job in the same area, right? So I moved from Nevada to Illinois, left my house, left my wife, left my dog to go rent a room in a random guy's house, right? To secure that for our future. So we were betting on something that was a priority for us, right? And it was hard, it was tough, but it worked out at the end of the day. And then for different moves now, with kids and whatnot, we've made choices that are no longer thinking about the immigration because that's already gone behind us. Now the priority is thinking about the future of the kids, right? And what's best for them and was in the second kind of level there. So I'd say, communication, like Dan said, and also prioritizing, like he also said, but also remembering that life is made out of seasons, right? It does not have to stay the same way all the time. So.
I'm going to have to say, Kat, that I'm not a good, don't have a good answer for this one because, obviously I'm on my third wife, and last year she told me to, if I don't smarten up, I might have to start looking for a fourth. So I don't know that I ever really figured it out. I think in hindsight, I thought work was important. And work is important, but I thought it was the most important thing to me. And come to the realization that, yeah, it gets me where it got us where we wanted to be, but it really wasn't that important. So again, I don't have an answer for this one. I'm still working on it. I think the one thing that I did do was figured out that I couldn't control my anger, couldn't control those kind of things on my own. I always thought I could. So I've reached out and spent a year and a half seeking help for that and started to understand that I should have done it sooner and not just for anger, but some other things. So sorry, I don't have a good answer for you.
No, I mean it's common. It's a sad common statistic, right? Like if we look at men's mental health, men in the mining construction industry are one of the highest for suicide rates. Mental health is terrible. Just and all of that compacts on your daily life. So the I may have given you a very targeted question, but it's because that's how unfortunately the stress can get there. And Tasia, looks like you got a
I
comment, or
was I
Dan?
was gonna say that was a great answer actually because it is the truth, right? It's there's not a script, there's not a formula out there, right? Everybody is different, everybody faces different things along life, and nobody has it all figured out. And understanding that and being like, I appreciate you, Vern, saying, being humble about it, right? Always constantly trying to learn. So that's just wanted to drop that there because I can appreciate somebody being as candid as you are, Vern.
It gets a little easier as you get older. You see the end of the road a little clearer.
Dan, did you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, no, that was great. And Tacio's evaluation of the seasons of life and yeah, all these conversations kind of tie back together, talk about the ego, talk about the seasons of life. They all kind of piggyback, right? And having the openness and understanding and willingness to seek help or ask for advice, et cetera, is key, right? Leaning on that support system and reevaluating what is important in life. And sometimes it takes a knock over the head to do that, right?
So speaking of knocks over the heads, I'm gonna pick on you, Dan.
Yeah.
But I'll share a story first. So when I was, I think I've told a lot of you guys this, and I'm not shy about all the wonderful, weird things that have happened in my life. But I remember when I was a very young engineer, I was 2 years out, and I was getting ready to, go back to work the next day. Woke up, heart was racing. I had this utter fear of dread an existential crisis, just started crying, and I had my first anxiety attack. And it was just thinking about the future, and for some reason, I felt like I was failing. I didn't think I had a future in the company. I was worried about potential growth. Just felt like an utter failure at life, and I was 23? Yeah, we'll say I was 23. Um, so if you had to tell your 23-year-old selves, or if you want, I again, targeted questions here. Um, Going through that, when you had that fear of utter dread, what would you tell your younger self about that?
But yeah, I'll go first. Basically looking at, I mean, I've had a similar situation where, I was at a job and we started shutting the lights off, and I've been there for about 3 years, and I'm got a what or soon to be wife, gonna get married here in a couple months, and I'm in company housing and starting to hear rumors here that we might be shutting this place down, et cetera. And they don't necessarily have to say that out loud, and you can kind of sense it in the air, right? So um, and it's kind of, don't should I double down, buy a house here? I got a wife or fiance, we're going to get married here, and this is all happening in about 3 months. So um, I've been in a very similar situation, right, where you don't know where you're at and what's going to happen, and you feel out of control, and stress and anxiety and all that stuff manifests in very different ways. And it's they say stress is a killer and anxiety is a killer, and it is. I mean, it can manifest in so many different health issues that you would have never thought. And I won't get any more deeper than that, but it I guess when I look at my younger self and in through those moments and whatnot, and it's easy to look back and have that perspective, but it really is about perspective and being in the moment, right? I don't want to get too mindfully, but I'm a big believer in that. So being present in the moment, understand that what you have, gratitude, understanding where you're at to be in the position, right? So many people would be very thankful to be in the position where they may or may not lose their job, right? So some people don't have a job, or et cetera, or health issues, et cetera. So just having perspective in the moment, gratitude in the moment, and mindfulness in the moment, being present and understanding that. But as life goes through the different seasons, you continue to exercise that muscle, right? So it's not, oh, I found the solution, but it takes practice and understanding that and continuing to exercise that through the process.
I want to let Vern go on this one because then I might learn something and go modify my answer.
Oh, I don't know about that. I was going to say, it's hard for me to think about what I would tell my younger self, because like I mentioned, the industry has changed from when I got into it till now, and much for the better. I'll give you an example. In August 1982, my partner was killed on swing shift, um, late in the swing shift. Ended up in the hospital with him until he passed away about 3 o'clock in the morning. We were expected to be at the MSHA office in town at 9 o'clock that morning. And then we were back on shift that afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, it's tough to think about what I would tell my younger self. I think the one thing that I will say is, looking back now, uh, getting run off from a job or losing a job's not the worst thing that can happen to you. It might feel like that to begin with, but every time I've been run off, it's opened another door. So it's not that it's not that bad, and I know it's hard to think about it positively, but don't think about it negatively all the time either. Change is a good thing. It's just hard to manage.
Yeah, I was, when I when I think about the moments where I was really, I don't know, maybe I could call it anxiety at the time, or I don't know. It's hard to actually describe what the feeling was, but probably I would call a lot of insecurity, right? About what's going to happen next, right? Like, is this actually working? And you start all this self doubt, and it seems like there's a hole under you that you don't know how to get out of. I can think at least of a couple times that I felt just like that, where I'm in trouble and I have no idea how this is gonna pan out. This is gonna be terrible, right? Um, both, I wanted to hear your perspective, Vern, because you're talking about experience, right? Like you've got a lot of experience, and I think the experience gives you, you know, the, the tools that you need to now not worry or not fret so much about things that are happening in the moment, and that calm attitude to know that it's just another something that's going to happen and it's going to pass the same way that the other ones did. Um, and from that, I love the experience word, but I kind of sound like maybe an old man when I speak about this. But I think the main thing that I love about getting from life is called perspective, right? And I think you mentioned that word as well when you were talking, Vern, is when you try and when you fail here and you fail there and eventually you start succeeding, if you push through and you start getting that perspective, that is the ground where you can stand on and say, look, nothing else will actually hurt me, right? Like it'll just make me grow. And Kat, piggybacking on what you were talking about, your specific, example of anxiety, I can't say what it was with you, but for me, I think the moments that I felt most anxious was because I didn't have all the perspective that I could at the time. If I could have, just a bit more experience to know that this, like any other thing, is gonna pass, and I'm bigger than this. I can do more. I think all the insecurity goes away when you start getting that little bit of a callus, right? You've fallen enough to realize that falling is just part of life, and it's okay, right? And the next thing is going to come, and you're going to do well at, and failure is part of life, and that's what I can say. Perspective. I think the older we get, or the more experience we get in the industry or in life as a whole, we probably start talking about more like the world wise people, and that's what I value nowadays. Is what I think gives me ground to know that looking back at myself when I was fretting so much and worried about what's going to happen now is just to say, hey, have the perspective that, for you to grow, this needs to happen, right? Like you need to learn. So it's part of learning.
So to
I think
bring some,
another thing is, Kat, is to find somebody that you trust that will tell you you're full of shit when they need to tell you you're full of shit, and you understand it because they've been there with them. I had a Don Schumacher that we talked all the time. We fought about stuff, but it worked out well because he wasn't afraid to call me out on things. So find that person. It may not be even anybody in the industry, but find that person that you're comfortable with asking about things.
Yeah, and just a compliment on that too. Having that at the moment to give you that security, right? And just realizing that time just makes everything, kind of similar to what happens in, financing the stock market, right? Like today, you look at it today, it's up and down, it's a roller coaster. But when you zoom out further time, everything looks like a nice straight line. You don't even see the bumps anymore. So just realize that time will pass and things will get better, right? And having that notion is really hard, especially when you're young. We're starting a new job, and maybe that was or was not what happened to you, Kat, but that's kind of what happened to me.
yeah, I think the way I've always been described it, and I have this in my life, you can either have I can't remember what WIM conference, but you could have your own personal board of directors. One of them's a peer that will call you out on your bullshit. You have your mentor, which is someone that usually you don't work with and you can just vent to. You have your mentor that you can ask those technical questions, or they can be outside the industry, but you have that group of people that you can rely on to say, hey, I need to hold a board meeting to check my sanity. But I found, and this is just amongst my male friends and colleagues, they have a lot of hesitancy about having mentors and about having the peers. And we kind of talked about it's the ego of the industry. But one, do you guys have a mentor? Vern's a mentor to many people, whether or not he realizes it. But do you guys have that mentor? How did you find it? And are you a mentor to someone else?
Yeah, so I wouldn't just specifically say one person's a mentor. I mean, I go to different people for different things. I mean, I'm blessed enough to have in-laws that I greatly respect and have been through a lot. So I go to them honestly for a lot of things, and for business stuff, I go, for different people. But um, yeah, just the gaining perspectives and understanding that too. And then I hate to say it, but sometimes too many opinions is not a good thing either, right? So it's being able to figure out, divide, revives into ones that you trust and yeah, and understand that and yeah, it's understanding the people that there's not a hidden motive, right? That's the people that you trust is regardless of what you tell them, say, or the outcome of the situation is they're not going to judge you because you don't want someone that's going to be sitting there and refereeing you on the backside of whatever decision you make. So it's finding those people which are hard to come by, but that have your best interest at heart and regardless of the situation will support you.
I like Dan said, I don't know that I would have one mentor. There's definitely a lot of people that have been my mentors, probably without even knowing, without even feeling it. Not a formal procedure, right? But there's definitely a lot of those experienced people out there that I try to anchor myself to some way somehow and ask questions when needed. I think that's a good thing. It's helped me in many different ways, many choices along my professional and personal path as well. Um, um, as far as mentoring someone, I don't think that I have mentored anyone in the mining industry per se, but probably more or less in a more personal type of way. And it's both humbling. It teaches you a lot as well. You learn probably just as much, and then it just helps you get perspective again, right? So yeah.
I think I've had lots of different mentors, like these guys were saying, that not just one. I mentioned Don Schumacher. He was, whether he liked it or not, he was a mentor because I'd pay attention to him after I'd throw him out of my office. But um, as far as mentoring others, that's really what I do now. I work with our leadership teams in the field, go out in the field with them, and I think the thing that I can do, and they don't take offense to it, is because they don't work for me, they can either listen to me or they don't have to. But what they do understand is whether you like it or not, you ask the question, I'm going to tell you what I think, not what you want to hear. So I think if you're going to mentor people, keep that in mind. Don't, it's not about mollycoddling, it's about telling the truth and giving. I know you mentioned, Dan, something about opinions, but be truthful with people, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I think I saw something written one time, and that came, stuck with me. As good friends throw a throat punch, right? Good friends, they'll jab at you when need be, and that's definitely what you need out of a mentor.
Definitely. Wow. We are at 50 minutes. I told you guys an hour would go by fast. So last question. We asked this at the last coffee break too, before we do open up for comments. But if there was one, and this one's hard because it doesn't actually exist and it's not really possible, but if you can make one company policy change to just better support, whether it's training that you're seeing, the mentoring, the mental health of just all the employees and workforce that we have in the industry, or safety, what is kind of the one thing that you would like to see from a policy perspective change in our industry?
I'll start first, because I'm not a big policy person. Okay, I understand. Yeah, we need them. We need them to set some expectations and set some rules. But what I would like to see companies think about is simplifying those and just making them easier. And by that, I mean, you've all seen the policies that are 15, 16 pages long, and we expect people to read them and then sign them. Here's an example. I check into hotels when I'm out traveling, and I have to I have to agree to the terms to join their Wi-Fi. Do you think I've ever read any of those? No, I just checked the box. So it's this similar thing with the policies and the procedures for our companies. I'd like to see them simplified, and as far as procedures go, make them more visual because people are visual people.
I was hoping Dan was going to go next.
I can go. I can go.
I was gonna say, look, I might have a few crazy ideas. You asked for one, right? I'll go my I think my one preferred one would be everyone that works, at a mine site, or, is in this industry creating things, making decisions that impact things that get done in the field. I would almost say that every one of the people that work at a mine site need to have time outside of the office as an obligation, where they have to go and spend time in the field. That field being, directly related to what they're doing, or something, just that they have to go to learn something new. I would, if I were to make a policy, I would make that one, and I'll leave it at that.
So as far as policy, I'm with you, Vern, as far as bureaucracy and everything. It gets to be a mess. But if I had one policy that I could do, kind of pertains to this topic, is parental leave. I got kind of a personal story on that with kids and whatnot, and I think the mining industry as a whole has an opportunity, there could be, as far as the social side of things, the sins of the past, bringing that forward. I've had the luxury of working for U.S. companies and international companies as well. And one thing that I've seen is that a lot of different countries and different cultures, put more weight on outside the workforce, and the person as a whole. And one of those policies is, parental leave. So for, having a child and all that, during those first few weeks, are very stressful, and having to go back to work, I think, prematurely is very stressful adder. So, I think it would be a welcome change in the mining industry and companies as a whole to, incentivize young families and young people to come into this industry through that policy. So whatever that time may be, but extended amounts more so than is currently available.
Perfect. Thank you. And with the last 5 minutes, I'll open it up if anyone wants to raise their hand or type in a question. But while they do that, do you guys have any last closing thoughts while we wait for our audience participation?
Just partake on Dan's point on the family, right? The raising a family in the industry, the time that it takes to get, to a more or less constant spot after you have a child. I think the industry could probably foment better conditions for that to be a bit smoother and help everybody out during that phase.
Okay. We do have a question. How to find a suitable mentor? So you guys can either finish up with your closing thoughts or address the finding a suitable mentor question.
I think finding a suitable mentor is a little bit difficult, but look outside of the normal. So if you work in an office, look outside of the office to somewhere else. A good mentor may be somebody in the field or vice versa, because one of the things that I've always tried to stay away from is looking for a mentor that was a technical expert in the field that I was in. It's easier to get a different perspective in life and the things that you need to do from somebody that doesn't know exactly what you do.
I was going to add that for me to find a mentor, it starts with being an eager learner. So if you're the person going around and always asking questions, always interested, I almost feel like some weird way the universe is going to conspire and make a mentor come in your way. Because mentors are, I would say, I see them as teachers, right? They're people that are excited. It's like a professor in a classroom who's excited for the student that's always asking questions, right? And they some way somehow give that student, even extra time or, get closer to him or her. So I would say that starts with the person really being an active, eager learner, and then you're going to find that person who's out there and who's excited to teach you, right? I think that's kind of it for me.
Yeah, we have 2 ears and one mouth, right? So active listening and understanding that. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when people actually active listen, what they'll divulge and et cetera. But yeah, finding a person that you trust really is the thing. So.
Okay, and I believe Melissa has a question. She had her hand raised.
Well, I was actually going to piggyback on that as far as, obviously the three of them would be perfect people for the mentor program that we've got with the WIM. And so I was just going to say they could utilize the mentor program that we've got, and the three of them would be excellent candidates for the mentor program. So because it's so difficult to find. It's not difficult to find good mentors, but you just kind of find them along the way, right? But I just want to say that I think the three of them, all of you guys are just this was just amazing, and I've cried so much, and I spent the better part of my childhood not crying and trying to learn how to find my feelings as I've gotten older. So, wow, this is just amazing, so amazing. Like you guys, thank you so much. This is my first one, so I don't want to steal the rest of the time, but Thank you so much. This is truly a magnificent thing that you guys are doing. And I'm so happy that I attended. And thank you guys for being so open and honest and willing to share each and every one of your stories, because I'm blown away. So thank you for just being willing to talk frankly, even, because not everybody's willing to do that. And I think that that's something that we have kind of lost along the way. And I've worked with the mines for 30 years, and this was refreshing. So don't stop being you. I think it's lovely. It's wonderful. So, and thank you, Kathleen, or Kat, right? You said Kat, for doing this. I'm just so excited about it. So, and I'm sorry I took so much time.
Other guys, but I have to speak from the heart and tell the truth because I'm too dumb to lie. I forget about it afterward.
Well, I hope your marriage works out. So, I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We are at the 5 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I don't know if our panelists can hang out at all. Before I ask for any additional last minute questions, we will just put in the plug for December 19th is our next coffee break. Still finalizing exactly what kind of topic I want to talk about. But if you guys want to hear anything specific, drop it in the chat. We're very open to talking to speakers, talking about stuff like this, going a different route. I'm always looking to see what I can do to help bring value to the programming that we provide. So with that, if anyone else has any last minute comments, questions, queries.
I just want to say thanks, Kat, for having me on. I enjoyed doing it.
Thank you all for being such wonderful panelists and indulging in my crazy ideas every now and then.
Yeah, we appreciate this. I think the industry needs this, and very, very glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Kat.
Thank you, Kat.
Thanks. So if no one has, I'll give it another minute if anyone has any other additional questions or comments. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else want to unmute. So again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you again. Round of applause for our wonderful panelists. As we've started off this coffee break, stories are important and so are the words. And you never know where your stories are going to impact people in the industry and who you can resonate with. So thank you all for taking your time to join us on this lovely Friday evening. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a happy Turkey Day and Black Friday shopping, and stay safe out there.